almost there. Preparing right now. Sorry, it took me just a little bit longer to get the buttons all clicked. This is my first time trying to actually do the live YouTube stream, so I apologize.
Well, I just got a pop-up that said the meeting is now streaming live on YouTube.
Oh,
Aha.
yeah, same here.
All right. Yep, it is good to go.
Okay.
Okay, so today is June 10th, 2020. We'll call the meeting of the Salem Public Art Commission to order. And let's do a roll call. I'm Chris Darcy, Chair of the Commission. Paula, are you there?
Paula Booth, Commissioner.
Michael?
Michael Hernandez, Commissioner.
Rachel?
Rachel Bucci, Commissioner.
Heather?
And Heather Demke with Public Works.
Great. What do we have on? And it looks like our only guest is Mitchell Jones so far.
Mitch from IT, and we would next, after introductions, have public comment. As was stated in the email, we're now doing public comment via email or all in writing, so that we can maintain accurate records of such. And I did not get any. That was posted in the agenda. I did not get any comments from any individuals.
Great. So I think first up on our action items is just a status report on the library.
Yes, prior to that, let's do a quick approval of the consent agenda and the minutes from last month, if that's okay.
I
Who'd like
move.
to-
Oh.
Oh, go ahead.
I move that we accept the consent agenda and the minutes from our last meeting.
Is there
I
a second?
that.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And no one is opposed, so that is approved. Moving on, the library.
Yeah, so just quick mention, this will probably be a very, very quick meeting because I do not have a whole lot of updates, but I did reach out to engineering, and that's one that unfortunately the contract yet with Amanda Wojak for the library has still not yet been signed. And I don't know what the holdup is on that, but I know they've been working with purchasing staff to try to get that finalized. So I'll keep folks posted, but and no updates on that front just yet.
Okay, I think that would be good, because if in fact she is going to be asked to, do another round of design on her proposal, she'll want to know that she has a contract in place in order to, just cover herself.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a place to, I wasn't part of the conversations. Is there a way to see her proposal, or is that available?
I could reach out to Erin. I'm sure we could share that.
Yeah.
I'm just curious. I would like to see
Yeah,
what
I'm sorry. I thought we
thinking
had
about.
sent that out to everyone.
You
so-
may have, and I will look.
I don't think I saw it either, though. I'm interested in seeing it too, because I missed the last meeting. So
Okay.
that would be great.
Yeah, there was very good conversation around her proposal, and lots of just, and there was definitely consensus that she was going to rework it. I might have it electronically, but again, I'd have to reboot my computer to pull it up right now. Okay, so we'll make sure that gets out. I don't think there's any problem sharing it. And especially, her background, the piece that she wrote about her concept, and yeah. Okay, what's next? The police station?
Okay, so actually next we have the convention center. Just a quick update on what's going on with that acquisition.
So, and Michael, please chime in. Michael and I met with staff of the convention center, 2 people from the Oregon Artist Series Foundation, and staff from the Urban Renewal Agency, and Heather. And we met at the convention center, looked at the wall that Chrissy Birch, the general manager, thinks would be a good site for a work of art. It is at the south end of the building, on the wall that actually is parallel to Ferry Street. It faces that sculpture court. There's currently a large explanatory panel for some of the outdoor sculpture on that, which they will, I believe, just remove. So after this meeting, I have a picture of the wall and with this panel on it. I can share that by email. You know, it basically is a large rectangular portrait type space. You know, it's wider. The convention center has very high ceilings. Sorry, Michael.
It's the reason why it's a wide landscape is because there's a thermostat or there's some electrical, do you recall? There's something that's about, you know, it's I guess like chest or chest high that won't allow you to hang art too close to it vertically. So it ends up needing to sit a little higher up, and it can be really wide, but you know, in terms of where it would really need to sit. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So and then we as a smaller group, Michael for just at the beginning, but Stephen Adams and Mary Lou Zeek and Chrissy Birch and I brainstormed a number of artist names. I then reached out to all of you who contributed more names. And we have, I think there's a very robust group of artists, at least to be considered. And I previously shared that. We have a meeting tomorrow to look at that list of names, and obviously it needs to be shortened. And then we'll do some direct outreach to see what work some of those artists might have that fit within the budget. It does sound like the Oregon Artist Series Foundation is coming to agreement to put another $6,000 into the project that would get the budget up to $15,000, which is helpful. And that's kind of the status report.
I would add to it. So the space that Chrissy had recommended, what you just referenced, the option would be though to rotate another piece of artwork from another location at the convention center as an option, because it's not all or nothing. Like we have to find the perfect piece to fit that space, because what we could do is move the new piece to a different location and swap the other art to land being cited. So there is a little bit of leeway. I mean, it's more variables. I'm not, you know, put it more in a prominence. In my opinion, you could put it in more of a prominent spot for a while as a new piece of art, because the idea of this location doesn't get quite as much traffic. Although Chrissy did say that you know, there's quite a bit of meetings that happen along that side of the building there. But anyway, so just in terms of the size that we need to acquire to specifically fit that one space, the idea would be that we could open it up a little bit to entertain the idea of rotating another piece of art. If we can't find the ideal scenario, there is that option to rotate.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
That was a pretty impressive list. It looked like about 23 different names, all from either Salem or Portland area. So that's very cool to see.
Yeah.
Let me know for the meeting tomorrow if you think it'd be helpful to have. I don't know if she was planning to have a screen, or if that's something that we might, you know, want some kind of ability to pull some of these names up and just look at their work, or how that should proceed. Just let me know if that would be helpful.
Okay. I haven't heard from anybody.
Chris, did you have an opinion on where you wanted to be for tomorrow's meeting in terms of editing the list down a bit? I know I saw your email of trying to get down to 8, or a suggestion.
You know, I didn't hear, I really didn't hear back from anybody. So, and the meeting's tomorrow. So, you know, I'm going to try to, well, first of all, there are some people on that list who are not going to work for that building. Like Dennis Cunningham only does works on paper, you know.
Smaller
They're
work.
small.
Yeah.
Well, he has done some large, he has some large pieces. And he actually has a large inventory of work because he's just pretty broke. He's not in good shape health-wise. So there's people like that. Yuji Hiratsuka from OSU, same deal. He's a printmaker. Trying to think. Dan May, who I think is a great idea, mostly works on paper or smaller works. So, there are some of those people, some folks will just kind of move down the list in terms of a priority. It was interesting. I'm on the mailing list for the Russo Lee Gallery, and I got an email yesterday, and they're opening up again for business after being closed. But Lucinda Parker has a show that opens, I think, either this week or next week, and so does Sherry Wolf. The Lucinda, I don't know if we could afford a Lucinda Parker, but I'll send a link. The work is gorgeous. Michael Brophy has some, I think, some interesting work of the scale that might work for that space. So, I mean, I think, if any of you have priorities based on the list, let Michael and me know. And then, I expect we'll just work through the list.
I have a couple of questions. What is the priority in terms of where the artists are coming from, or medium, or have you guys talked about that? Which artists, what is the priority in terms of, do you want regional? Do you want local?
Yes.
Go
So we did talk about that.
Mhm.
The priority for the convention center is regional, which they consider to be Northwest. So it could be, could be a Washington artist, could be an Oregon artist. There are folks on that list who are local to Salem, who are local to the Willamette Valley, like Richard Thompson lives in Dayton. There are folks from Portland. I'm trying to think if there's anybody from Eugene, and there are a number of people who are dead. Like a Dan May, like George Green. Who else is on there that's deceased?
Yeah, I saw the list. I was just wondering if the group had talked about what exactly, I mean, because the list is really varied. And so what's the criteria that it's going to be narrowed by?
That's a good question, Rachel. I mean, the list grew, it's twice, not triple the size that, I thought it was going to be. So it's really interesting to get into more of that kind of line of questioning of like, well, what is the criteria? Because it feels like, they want a bigger piece, because I think we said it could be, Chris, like 5 feet wide by a 5x5, 4x4. I mean, it could be a fairly significant size.
Well, it could be larger than that, to be honest with you.
Even be larger than that, which not that we have all the money,
Right.
but the idea is it was left fairly open to Chris's point that, I mean, to sample Salem artists specifically, how far we want to stretch out. I think it was just, there's so many players involved that the feedback's coming, we're getting quite a bit of suggested artists. That's why the list grew so large. In my mind, it's making it certainly more challenging to kind of whittle that down. I guess from my perspective, when I did see the list grow, my thought first off was, not knowing how the convention center secured artwork in the past. I know that, it's been a pretty simple process. Like, what was the last one that OASF,
Rick Bartow.
The Rick Bartow painting.
The Bartow piece, is my only more recent. The last piece it did, from what I recall, there wasn't a deep list of like, well, who should we look into? It happened fairly easily. So now this idea of like, well, what are the parameters and who decides? It's going to be interesting. There's some maybe lower hanging fruit. of some elderly folks or Salem artists, you know, Nick and Sloy, or there's some conversation. Who was the gentleman who just passed to from Salem?
Terry Melton.
Terry Melton. So I don't want to go on and on here, but the idea would be, in a perfect world, you know, you could narrow it down to, like, say 8 artists, and then solicit those artists as to, like, what piece best fits this scenario, and look at some visuals. That's a lot of work, soliciting the 8 artists. I mean, some of them might go through their gallery rep, like PDX in Portland. And that might be easier, but I'm not sure if they've ever had to do that before, like whittle down, you know, 8 to 10 artists without actually looking at actual pieces. Is kind of where that's my opinion today. Is, wouldn't it be great if we were whittling it down from a pretty good list based on actual pieces, and not dismiss somebody without even looking at actual artwork? I don't know if that makes any sense to you, but.
Yeah, I mean, I think also it's important to look at the collection as a whole and think about where there are holes that need or should be filled in terms of women, artists of color, younger and older, you know, what that balance, geographic considerations. And so, and I don't know if we want to do that in the context of what's just currently hanging in the convention center, or as a broader look at the entire collection that the city owns. I know, seems like there are several female artists represented at the convention center, which is great.
And then,
I can't remember exactly what's there, all of it.
There's a large Kristen Coons. There's a Marilyn Higginson. There is
Phyllis, yes.
There's a Phyllis Yes that was actually a gift from Terry Melton.
Okay.
There is a John J. Cruzen. There is a Harry Woodman painting that belongs to the city. That is part of the city.
There's some Hallie Ford.
Yeah.
Rotating. There's some rotating work from Hallie Ford as well.
Right. The Hallie Ford pieces are the biggest pieces that are in the northwest quadrant of that building. You know,
I can appreciate what you're saying, Rachel, for sure. I mean, how to build it out to be more diverse from whatever vantage you want to cite, like culturally, regionally. I mean, I cited Storm Tharp. I've been excited about him, you know, and for that same reason, because I'm like, look, we can keep putting more Salem artists that are veterans, etc. But I thought, you know, to your point, that's why I put Storm Tharp. I thought his work really is really contemporary and stands out as really different. But, you know, he's seen as a Portland guy, not a Salem, you know, whatever. But I was excited to your point about, like, let's consider some new, something a little different just by virtue of diversity.
So another, just this is maybe totally out there, but would that location even be suitable for some sort of interior mural or painting that covers the expanse of that wall?
No, I don't think that is, I don't think that the convention center is looking for something like that.
Okay.
I think that the collection is a movable collection. I mean, but granted, some of the paintings are pretty good size, the ones on loan from Willamette. And, but we did not discuss painting anything directly on the wall. And as Michael said, you know, this is a space that it sees a lot of use when the building's open. So there's catering, there's gatherings, there are crowds, there are exhibitors, and that's why the work is installed higher than you might necessarily see it in a gallery or another kind of installation. And Chrissy did mention that. And I think that's just that is the reality of the space. It has to remain versatile for their clients.
So Chris, say we were, because so tomorrow I can't participate. I'll be in Portland at a family function all day tomorrow.
So,
But I was planning on editing the list myself, after the meeting today. I'll send that in. I don't know if anyone else can, but the question is, how do you see getting the list narrowed down to say the top 3? Like the question more specifically would be, who would be responsible for contacting all the artists or gallery reps to inquire about what pieces of that size or scale would fit to be able to because we could get multiple submits from one artist times 8 to 10 artists. Who actually does that soliciting?
well, I would volunteer to do some of it. I actually don't think it would be productive to have the city staff from Urban Renewal do it.
That's why I brought it up, because I was
Yeah.
just real curious of how that actually happens. I mean, it takes time.
I mean, the last 2 acquisitions at the convention center, I initiated.
Mhm.
So, we bought a John J. Cruzen. It was the convention center typically has money once a year, and they might have $15,000 or less. And, I mean, John J. Cruzen had work available. His work is landscape based of the Willamette Valley. The convention center is a visitor oriented space. And that purchase was made quickly. With the second purchase, the Bartow, it really came down to 2 artists. Former Mayor Peterson was very interested in expanding the diversity of the artists whose work is in the convention center. So we looked at work by Rick Bartow, who's Native American, and V. Maldonado. He used to go by Victor Maldonado, a Mexican-born artist, lives and works in Portland. And I basically went up to Froelich Gallery and met with Charles and his crew and looked at the Maldonado work that was available, looked at the Bartow work that was available within our price range. And then, brought some images back, and ultimately they selected the Bartow. And then OASF paid to have the framing improved. And then, Charles drove it down. So, again, I'll be candid with you. Eileen probably submitted 8 names of the 23 names on that list. And if you look at the list, the top of the list started with the actual selection committee meeting after our meeting at the convention center.
Right.
Then we had about 8 names, and then the list doubled. I added a few more people just because I think there are people who are painting on the scale that the convention center needs, whose work I think should be considered. I think that, there might be a couple people in the group who think that it should be a Salem artist. That is a very small pool of people who have work on that scale available, period. So, but thinking over, the events of the past couple of weeks, I want to make sure that we are giving everybody who is an artist of color, who might be appropriate, an opportunity. So we could consider R.V. Smith. He's probably within the budget. Whether people, and I happen to love his work. I did a big public art project with him a year and a half ago. He does have a body of work. He just had a show at PSU. He might have work there. His work has no connection to Salem or the Willamette Valley. Jeremy Okai Davis, another African-American painter, has had a number of commissions, just did a big commission for U of O.
Samantha Wall is another artist.
Samantha Wall.
But
Yeah.
her work, I think a lot of it is on paper, so it may not be appropriate for that location, but I think it would be worth looking at her as well.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, yeah, and then, you know, there are other, I mean, and then there are other people who are artists of color whose work is, a lot of the work was in the last biennial at Disjecta, but it's installation, it's digital media, it's not appropriate for a wall in most cases. But we can look at, you know, we can consider that. Yeah. I mean, apart from having people come in with, you know, 5 to 8 names and trying to see where there might be consensus, I don't have a better process.
Paula, do you have anything to add to it?
No, I haven't been part of the conversation.
You saw the list though.
I did see the list, yeah, and it is a little bit overwhelming.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big list.
Well, I mean, I'll take responsibility for asking you guys for nominations and getting names from everybody. I think that was only appropriate. And, you know, some of the people I think are going to fall off the bottom and other people are going to rise to the top. And I think that's fine.
Would it,
Go ahead.
oh, I was just going to ask, would it be helpful after this meeting for us to each send you, like, to look at that list and to each send like the top, who we would see as maybe the top 3?
Yeah.
And then see if there's any kind of consensus that develops around that?
Yes, sure. I would love it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to look at the list again and kind of narrow it in, like, as my wish list, I guess.
Yeah, and I feel pretty confident, Chris, with you and Michael on that committee to, you know, make a good decision and help guide it, you know, the process in a good direction.
Chris, the only other parameter, I mean, I'm definitely feeling the diversity piece as kind of as one of the major clues to help whittle it down. The other one that's been kind of heavily on my mind is just there's a number of people either recently deceased, like a Dan May, that are experiencing some pretty significant health issues.
Richard Thompson.
Richard Thompson. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, these are people who. So I guess the quotient there is like in times of crises when it's, you know, your health, or a Terry Melton, you know, or they recently passed, or for me, it's definitely Wayne in terms of being able to help those families out. I mean, it's a great gesture to have the work selected, but the caveat is, you know, in hard times too, you know, it could be pretty significant to help someone out in a really hard time, or a family in a hard time. The other one, yeah, Terry, Dan, Sandra Nichols. You know, so again, if that means anything to anyone else, you know, that's something that's been resonating a little bit. I mean, it's not to say you take inferior work because someone's health is waning or they're deceased, but it's definitely something, you know, from Salem artists. Like the Dan May piece is interesting because you could go out with the idea of assembling a multi-piece, I don't know, what would you call that, Rachel? Like an assemblage type, you know, framed and mounted, really cool set of his work, smaller pieces combined into something that's more of a assortment with a lot of guidance, obviously, so that you don't rule people like him out. I mean, you don't want Dan to be forgotten. So again, those are just things that are on my mind I wanted to share, just in terms of those folks that aren't doing so well or recently passed away.
Yeah. I mean, I've known Terry for 40 years, and I don't particularly care for his paintings, but I think he is super deserving of an exhibition and a catalog that pulls together his works on paper, his drawings, his journals, his poetry, his writings, and the paintings.
Yeah.
Richard Thompson, I would love to see, what he has for our $15,000 budget. I like his work. He is someone of the Willamette Valley.
I'm
Dan,
not quite sure how many big pieces he has. He does so many works on paper that are roughly, 3 by 4 feet, or they're not huge. The piece that's in Pally Ford, that large painting of a pond, is atypical in terms of scale from my knowledge for him. But his pieces are fairly expensive. I don't know what his pricing is like these days, but for one of his originals, it's a little pricey. So getting something from him larger, if he has it even, if we could afford it, be interesting to know what he has.
yeah, well, I think that's going to be the same thing for Lucinda Parker. It's interesting when you see the work at Russo Lee, she's got some very large pieces, but she has a lot of smaller pieces.
Yeah.
And, that might be because the gallery suggested that they could sell more of them. That happens sometimes.
What was the price of the Rick Bartow?
Well, I had $15,000 to spend. So I looked, you can't buy a Rick Bartow painting of that size for any less than 15.
Okay.
Many are more expensive.
Yeah.
And of the $15,000 paintings, I might have brought images of 4 works back to the group to review.
Okay.
But anything larger is more expensive. The Maldonado work is less expensive. So, a $9,000 piece, we probably consider 2 $9,000 works. And ultimately, the group went for the Bartow, because he had a connection with Western Oregon, definitely a revered Native American artist nationally. Yeah. Yeah. I hope that the selection group will be open to looking at artists from Portland as well as, Nick and Sloy and Rob Bibler.
Yeah, me too.
The convention center is, I think it should have a bigger perspective.
Yeah, I share that same thing. Without pushing too hard, just to be
Right.
more mindful of that.
Right. But here's, and then, OASF has resources. So if, for example, to celebrate the 15th anniversary of the convention center, OASF could buy a piece by Nick and Sloy, hang those together. They could easily pay for that. They could easily consider a work by someone else. They don't have plans to spend down the money that they're holding right now.
Okay.
So there is opportunity there. Well, this is great. So if our action item on this matter could be that each of you send me your top, 3 to 5 names, that would be great. And I'll reach out to Eileen and Kelly and see if they have time.
Sounds good.
You're meeting tomorrow, Chris?
Yes, at 10. So it would have to happen today.
Okay.
So police station?
No, next we had Betty LeDuc, just
Oh,
a
great.
reminder.
Well, anybody know anything?
I think she's waiting to hear from us. What was there an update of some sort?
I think that the last exchange was that we didn't have an opportunity to take possession of anything, so things have been on hold.
Yeah, we I think corresponded with her to let her know that, well, two things. One, she had a show at, where was it? Somewhere in the Midwest. And so she wanted to include that piece, the one that we had been discussing in that show. And so that's happened, I think. And then we said we would be back, we would reconnect once we're closer to the opening of the library, because otherwise it would just need to be in storage. So as far as I know, it's all on track. We just need to, make sure that that painting comes back to Oregon. And then when we're ready to get it, which I think would be closer. What's the scheduled completion date? Is it January of next year?
I don't think that's soon, sometime next spring. So I'll have to ask again. I know they
Okay.
were thinking, I think late spring of next year.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we just added that back to the agenda just to touch base and make sure nothing was forgotten. I looked back at the letter that we sent her, and it was last May, and it looks like Valparaiso
Yeah.
was where the exhibition was. And so, yeah, we'd said it was going to be about 18 months work at the library. So I don't know if maybe we should reach out to her again and just, or if we want to wait on that.
It might be worth sending her a letter. I mean, just saying, we're touching base. The demolition, is starting at the library. And I drive by the library every day. It's hard for me to know whether there is full work going on with the demolition, given all the closures and the COVID stuff. So we might just want to, talk with Erin, and if it's pushed back, just let Betty know. But she is someone who, she does correspond by letter, so
Yeah.
we have plenty of time. It would just be easy to just touch base with her.
Yeah, it would be nice if we could include just like one maybe interior shot of the architecture rendering, so that, because it is really gorgeous, the space is going to look nice, and for her to know that her work is going to be in that space, I'm sure would be interested to see it.
Yeah.
Great idea.
I would be careful, though, to just say, the reinstallation plan for the art is still a work in progress. So we're not sending her those renderings so she's picking a wall.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I would just be careful around that. Okay. Well, great.
Check in with Erin then on the schedule, and if you want me to start the draft letter and then forward that your way, let me know.
That'd be great.
Okay. And the next item on our agenda was just same thing, just going to touch base quickly on the Eco Earth and make sure that's the conversations kind of continue on that. I haven't heard any updates myself on that.
Ditto. I still have that newspaper article in my dining room, the one that Cappy Lynn wrote about, this needs to be a priority for somebody. I haven't been down to Riverfront Park at all lately to even do a walk by.
It's still there. I rode my bike by, it's still there. No one moved it yet.
Yeah. I mean, I think we ought to, I still think it would be interesting to hold a public, kind of a forum about it when things are calm.
Yeah.
I don't sense a rush. It would be interesting to know, though, if if the rate of the falling tiles has increased, and who's picking up those tiles when they fall? The parks people?
That was Parks, yeah. So we should check in, and they had, I think, been placing them. There's a little cubby within the globe itself that they were tucking those away in. So yeah, I should probably go down and take a look and reach out to those folks. Yeah, I couldn't help but think this morning, I was thinking of the Eco Earth, if hopefully things will quiet down soon, what a healing potentially opportunity if we could start those conversations and around kind of repairing and rebuilding that could be pretty amazing. But definitely quite a bit going on right now. So.
Yep.
Chris, you said there was some damage at the Capitol,
Yeah.
the reliefs, or
Yeah.
what they do to them?
Spray painted them.
Oh, okay, that's what I thought.
Do you know who's handling the repair there, or who's?
Cleaning or
Well, it's funny. It's because I accidentally did a drive-by yesterday because I was coming back from the post office. And okay, so let's rewind. So there was a rally, demonstration at the Capitol. I find it amazing that there were not state police on site, but those bas reliefs were pretty heavily spray painted with Black Lives Matter and then fuck Trump language. And there were news pictures of people in the act of doing the damage. Anyway, somebody and I immediately got in my car and drove by and took some pictures, but somebody from the Capitol facilities team went down there, and that's when they covered the pieces. But then I forget who I reached out to, maybe some folks at the Capitol and the Arts Commission in Heather, and people were kind of on it. At least the things are secured. Someone at the Capitol suggested that they were going to power wash, and
Yeah, that was.
Well, that hasn't happened.
Oh, good. Don't power wash it.
A number of conservators were suggested.
Oh, good. They've got people.
Well, they have ARG, Tom Fuller.
Oh, ARG. Mm-hmm.
And then what's his name? Robert Kruger in Portland. All of them. Everyone said, don't power wash it. Someone said, don't let the paint sit on the marble for long. I was surprised yesterday when I went by to see everything was still wrapped, which means nothing's happened. Like a site visit, what have you. But it's, I realize
something's happening, because I know Jonathan said that he was going by the other day and he saw people out there, but it looked like they were scrubbing at it, which set alarm bells off. So I'm glad to hear that they've got ARG involved.
Well, I hope they have them. I have a friend who works there. I think I might email him. That building's on the National Register. SHPO should be involved. They can step in. And then the Arts Commission has a very good kind of registrar working in the public art program. And I suggested names and she immediately sent all the contact information over to the Capitol. She's very good. So we'll see. I copied Brian Clem, who's my legislator. This is a state problem. It's not a city of Salem issue, but it is, knowing how expensive it is to maintain all this stuff. It is just troubling to see stuff just get defaced.
Well, they also have a history. They actually clean those things with power washing, which is terrible. So I'm glad to hear somebody told them not to power wash, because it'll just push the paint into the marble.
Yep. I've been meaning to say something because though you think of the air in Salem as being relatively clean, but those bas reliefs were very, very dirty. Mm-hmm. And then, as is the one that's on the outside of the Marion County Courthouse,
Yeah.
really, really dirty. I drove by that last night. I also did a drive-by of Good Sense. Someone had attempted to put a mask on the sculpture, but it is safe. And I drove by the Mel Katz piece, which also seems like it's fine.
Yeah, it looks fine.
Yep. So, okay, what's
Okay, agenda, let's see. All right, well, the only other thing that we had for the agenda today was the code, proposed code and policy revisions. So I have a quick update, not as much information as I'd hoped to have today. I was kind of hopeful that we would be moving forward a bit, small steps forward. I did meet with, again, legal staff and staff from community development who work with that sign code. And kind of shared what our proposed revisions are. Again, just quick summary for the group. Again, we're looking at removing those fund percent allocations so that there's just one comprehensive fund that would be used for maintenance, management, and acquisition. And then we're looking to allow murals to be accepted, not necessarily into the collection, but to be accepted via an acquisition with the timeline would be determined and detailed out in that easement process. So I shared that with the group. You know, right now, presently, public murals are already exempt from sign code, but of course we know that we need to accept them into the collection. So there's not that big of a difference, but there was concern expressed that if we do look to perhaps approve more murals than have been in the past, that could trigger, you know, so much interest that there would be kind of businesses, you know, interested in you know, painting their signs. And I think there's concern that it would just stimulate too much interest potentially, and it could become kind of burdensome to staff. So what was suggested to me was that we actually do reach out and chat with folks from other local cities that have kind of this process in place. And in looking, I saw that Beaverton and Hillsborough, they do seem to have a very similar mural program to what it is that we're looking at doing. So they would like to speak with folks from those agencies just to see how their program, kind of get a summary from those folks and see if they've had any issues with too many folks wanting to paint. So I've reached out to both of those entities. I have not yet heard back. But that's kind of where we're at. And it's probably a good idea to slow down a little bit and just chat with other folks and see if they're having any challenges, or maybe they're not, but to get that feedback before we push forward.
I think that's a good idea. You know, the woman who ran the program in Hillsborough died. I'm blanking out on her name, a Japanese American woman.
Ooh.
Uh,
I can tell you who I emailed. And her name was Valerie Otani. That's who was listed on their.
She's dead. She is dead.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, she died this spring.
Okay.
I don't know if well, you could probably call the city and ask who's running the program now. They've got a very robust public art program in Hillsborough.
Yeah.
And then Beaverton has an arts council. I'm not sure who's running what part of it now, but they'd be good people to talk to.
So I'll try to give both a call because, yeah, Valerie's name contact was still posted, and then the other was just a real kind of generic arts mail. So I'm not sure if anybody's receiving that. So I'll reach out again. If you guys have other ideas, you know, for other names or other cities that we should chat with as well, let me know.
Maybe Eugene.
Okay.
I'm sure if you go to the city, there'll be an arts and culture thing, and they do have a public art person on staff. I'm not sure who it is. It used to be Isaac Marquez, but he might be gone. But you know, they had a big push for murals because they were expecting to be hosting the Olympic track and field stuff, which I think got postponed. So they were really beefing up the look and feel of downtown Eugene. But I think they'd be a good group that'd be another jurisdiction to speak with.
Sounds good. I'll reach out. So that's the update I have. Again, I know we were hoping to move things forward to council soon, but we're taking our time and we're going to do it right here. When we do that, along with the code revisions, we will need to look again at the SPAC guidelines and policies. And there's probably going to be some revisions to the different types of murals, assuming we move forward with this approach, what's accepted into the collection versus what would be accepted via easement acquisition for temporary purposes. I think we're going to probably have two different kind of criteria for those. And so we'll need to solidify that. And that also goes to council. So we're going to continue to have discussions. I guess next step is to talk to other folks and see what they're doing and what they've run into.
That sounds like a plan.
Okay.
Is that the last thing on the agenda?
That was, yeah.
Okay. I saw via social media that the budget for the Urban Development Agency was drafted, and it looks like there is some funding within it for alley improvements, like maybe $150,000 or something. And it might be interesting as we look at our, schedule out over the next couple months, if we ever meet again in person, maybe hearing from Hazel Patton and her group, or Cherie about, what they're thinking.
Yeah.
Because it looked like there were two things. One was signage around the alley naming, which there was a public process for. And then there was a separate allocation for improvements and, without a description. So I'm just curious to, know what's going on. And then if SPAC can be of help, to be ready.
Okay, yeah, I have not heard anything on that, so thank you for bringing it up. I know that they had done, or were working on kind of a pilot lighting
Right.
project down there by the McGrath's building, so I don't know if maybe that improvements would refer to that kind of, additional lighting downtown, but I'll ask, so I'll see if I can get some details.
Okay. I mean, there were a number of, I went to a number of meetings, so there were some streetscaping improvements, some plantings, lighting, benches. They had a whole, and then Hazel, mentioned paint treatments or paw prints on the sidewalk. That was one of my least favorites, but I just think it'd be good to, weigh in if we can. And then just one other thing, and before I open it up for other things you might want to offer. I had another one or two emails from Steve Belshaw at the police. He sent me some, because remember we had suggested some people who might be helpful to them, the police, as they figure out kind of the rationale for the material, the historical material and the artifacts that they want to display in the new police station. And it sounds like their architects have a subcontract with a framer who's designed some display units, but there is no, as far as I can tell, plan for the interpretation of the material. So I did say to him that I thought that would be an important thing for them to consider. And I haven't heard back from him, but my guess is that with everything happening over the last 2 weeks, he's got his hands full. But I will say, I drove north from downtown for the first time in over a month. And if you haven't driven by the police station, it's amazing. Do it. And it's going to be, well, now you can actually see what that front area is kind of will be like. So I think it'll be important for us to especially given everything that's been happening around policing issues, Black Lives Matter issues, rethinking the role of the police in a community. Since we have a white woman artist who's coming to do who is going to create the work of public art, I think we want to be really thoughtful about how that is all rolled out in a positive and constructive and inclusive way, but to be very purposeful about that. Anyway, what else should we talk about?
I just have something to share that I received yesterday in the mail, a postcard about an open house that's being held online regarding Gear Park.
Mhm.
I don't know if anyone else got that.
I did.
Okay, so I haven't done it yet, but it looks like you can give input on what you would envision or like to see in the future at that park. And I haven't seen whether it includes anything about public art, but if you want to go on there, there's probably a place to leave additional comments or something like that. But I intend to go on it and give some feedback. So
What park is that, Rachel?
it's Gear Park, and it's over behind the National Guard building on State Street.
Oh yeah, on State
Yes.
Street. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
The Emergency Coordination Center.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Where they're behind their firewall, there's actually some very large Dennis Cunningham work. There's some great public art in that locked up building now.
Yeah. Joe, I'm totally blanking on his name. Sean Healy and Thurston have a piece in there.
They do?
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
In the lobby.
Huh. I was on the art selection committee. I don't remember that.
Oh,
but-
wait, we're talking about two different buildings then.
Oh, yes, we are. Yeah.
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 The newer one is more
Yes.
adjacent to the park.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I was talking about the first one.
Yeah.
But that's a good point. When I got the postcard, it made me think that I think some master planning is going on around Bush Park. And I think Eileen is participating in that. So we should get an update from her on, whether there's been conversation about art there.
Yeah, I haven't heard. I knew that was supposed to start this year and I've not heard anything about it. So Eileen had volunteered to participate. So yeah, I should check in on that as well. And then in regards to just generally in art and parks, I just will share too, the SPRAB, the Parks Advisory Board, Parks and Rec Advisory Board, they did express interest several months back in kind of regrouping with this group because they do have continued interest in that as well. So at some point we should probably be virtual at this point, but if there's interest in connecting and just brainstorming with them again, I think they'd be interested. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I still think that there is a lot of opportunity in Salem for some temporary and seasonal installation works that could tie contemporary artists with the natural environment and curious families. And I think it could be an interesting opportunity for some younger emerging artists, collaborations. Would not require a large budget. Yeah.
So that park has two really large soccer fields. Well, I guess they're the size of normal soccer fields, but two soccer fields. And anyhow, during the winter, they're closed because they don't want people to tear up the turf. But they take away the goals, and so it's just a big open grassy area, and a lot of the Canadian geese or whatever they are, they congregate there. And walk by there, and I think this would be a great place to do some sort of temporary installation that's large, that kind of like keeps the geese off of the field, but then activates that space during the winter in some way. Because there's a walking path that goes along there. Lots of people are using it. And recently during this COVID closures, the Friends of Trees, they were out there and they planted, I don't know, at least 40 trees around
Oh,
the perimeter of that park, and all different kinds of trees. So it looks like, you know, people definitely are using that park. It's a lot more active now that they also have a bike track there. So there's lots of people who drive there and bring their kids with bikes to use that track. But then there's lots of people from the different neighborhoods that abut the Oregon State Hospital, and then to the east on the other side. And anyhow, it's becoming pretty active. So
that's great to hear. I'm glad you brought that up, because I just got that card yesterday. And it, you know, it, with the virtual kind of town hall or forum, you know, you can weigh in with your ideas without having to, you know, show up at 6 o'clock somewhere.
right.
You know, just make it, it's amazing how we're all learning how to do business in different ways, and we can keep things going. That's why I really appreciate people being available today, because I thought it was just good to keep connected and keep our energy, you know, positive.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, I only had one small thing, and maybe I missed it. Apologies, I didn't read the minutes from last meeting. But I drive by the, is it Preserve mural?
Yeah.
Has not been painted out. Did I miss something, or did we extend like a lifespan on that, or
Yeah.
they just haven't done it?
They have not done it. She's aware. I have emailed with the business owner just this last week, actually. And so she's aware that it needs to come down. Apparently they're all ready. Hopefully, fingers crossed, they've got the paint and they're planning to do it as soon as the weather dries. So
Okay.
there was a bit of a lag in between, but yeah, we made a final decision.
Okay. Yeah. That's all I got.
Heather, do you have any sense of how the TOT funds might be negatively impacted
Oh.
for next year?
I questioned a couple weeks back. It was still in the budget as requested, but of course they've been working on finalizing that. I think the budget, as was proposed, has a second reading coming up at the next council meeting. So let me check in again on that. My assumption was that, you know, we had requested 15,000 from that fund. It's been hit hard. I don't know details, but obviously, so my thinking is that that may not come our way this year, but I've not heard a final on that. So I'll reach out and I can let folks know.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
I mean, I can, I'm sure that TOT fund has been hit hard, because we've now been through one quarter of the year with no, you know, hotel motel business. So I know when we met with Chrissy, she said that they've been really hit hard at the convention center. But if it comes down to making a case for some allocation from TOT to SPAC, I would lean heavily in the direction of the Echo Earth Ball and the maintenance, and just, you know, it's a very small allocation to begin with, and making sure that it, you know, it stays as intact as possible. I totally appreciate the circumstances, you know, the environment. But yeah.
Okay. So I'll reach out again. The balance that we do have is, as I shared with the group last month, is right at 50,000 right now. So.
Okay. Well, maybe one thing to leave with for people to think about is, we had such a good experience with the Oregon Environmental Council on the Good Sense project. It was a partnership. There was lots of back and forth. We ended up with a nice work of art. It's beautifully cited. There's real meaning behind it. If we could think about, who else might we look to for some kind of another collaboration, I think that might be a way to get something going. Just keep some good energy moving.
Mm-hmm. A good idea. Does anyone know when the Salem Art Association is going to be reopening?
No, but Eileen took a job with them. She has some kind of a temporary job with them, and that's why she's
Really?
not available this morning. So I heard that they may be taking a part of the Salem Art Fair virtual, maybe creating some kind of an online marketplace for some of the artists who might be willing to test that out. But I haven't heard anything. And then what are you hearing about from the Hallie Ford? Nothing?
A lot. But they are, I think right now, shooting for early to mid-August to reopen. They, because they're associated with the university, they have some other considerations around the university reopening and opening its campus again and so forth.
Is it the Bonnie Hull? The Bonnie Hull show supposed to be the next thing that comes in, or?
Yeah, there's going to be that, and then a Clifford Gleason show.
Yeah.
So I don't think they're planning to have openings for either of those shows. So they're looking at doing something online.
Huh. Boy, it's such a, for all of these artists who are scheduled for shows in commercial galleries or the museums, it's a whole different world. You think, oh, I got this big opportunity, and then poof.
Yeah, like it wasn't hard enough before.
Right.
Right.
And then great, we can let 5 people see the work, or Roger just wrote a book on Clifford Gleason.
Yeah. I mean, I guess on the upside is that it's, while some of the in-person activities are limited, there are some new opportunities for access for people who wouldn't otherwise be able to travel to see a show in person, like if they do an online lecture and things like that. So I know Maryhill has done a couple of different online things, and I participated in one of them last weekend, and we had people from Alabama and Chicago and all over Oregon and Washington, and so that was kind of cool to see that, and gave an opportunity to see people face to face that you may not otherwise meet with. So
that's a good point. I'm actually doing something tonight with Theater 33, which now is in residence at Willamette University, but
right.
They're doing a reading, and it's going to be shared by Zoom. And I'm not sure how many people are going to be involved, but I'm curious to see how that goes.
Yeah, I got an email about that and I forgot about it. So is it too late to sign up?
You should check it out.
Okay.
And go on there. You can either go to the website, but the Facebook event page is that seems like it's pretty robust, and I think tells you how many spots are still left. So.
Yeah, and a note on the SAA front, I did get an email from SAA last week. I don't know if you guys got it. it was the first correspondence from Sandra Burnett. I kind of skimmed it, to be honest with you, for any like something that just stood out right off the bat. But it just struck me, frankly, that it took that long to hear something from her specifically. Because if you took Hallie Ford, I mean, they spoke to membership discounts due to closure, like right out of the gate. I really appreciated how they buttoned that up, really timely. And then I've been waiting to kind of see what SA is going to say. And then, like I said, I skimmed it. Maybe I'll go back and look at it. But in terms of the art fair being canceled, largest source of income, they do get TOT dollars for the art fair. So it just makes me wonder, more questions around how budgets play out from 2020 budget, given, no events are happening, et cetera, just to see like, well, they did get funds. So, unfortunately they have to play it out in a lesser way than the actual event. But yeah, I'm super curious to see how that staff piece picks back up. It's interesting to hear Eileen's helping out. Yeah, to be continued.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything. Yeah. I mean, I think anybody who can is trying to open up slowly, like Lord and Scriber, the Gaiety Hollow property is going to open up this weekend for visitors, and they've been closed. And I've heard that Deepwood, the volunteer corps, because it's largely, retirees or people who might have a spouse who has a compromised health condition, that they need people to help in the historic gardens. I sent an email to somebody at Willamette Heritage, actually, after they said they were open, and I never got a reply at all. So I don't know. Things are, people I think are lurching forward.
Yeah.
Sort of.
Yeah, there's so many bits and pieces to the whole thing, when you're working with the public, because there's all the guidelines that are related to the staff and what they have to do internally in terms of, work environment. And then you've got the whole public side of it as well. So it's challenging.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I think, that was just with the COVID stuff. And now with all the other, unrest and the protests and the marches, and it's, these are unsettled times. I actually feel good about the last city council election because I think that some of the new members seem like they would be focused on the whole city, not just a one aspect of development or something. So I'm hopeful that that's going to play out. So it's not about a bridge. It's about how do we create a city that we all, where people can thrive and make a living, and it's safe and clean, and our kids are happy, and we've got public art and parks, and I'm actually looking forward to see how that kind of happens or not.
So I don't know if any of you watched the city council meeting on Monday.
I forgot.
Yeah, so we were just happened to catch it on it was on CCTV. So one thing that they did that I thought was great and responsive and acting quickly, one of the counselors put forward a motion to close off some of the downtown streets on the weekend so that restaurants can move tables into the street and have outdoor dining. And so they were looking, I think, at portions of Court Street, State Street, and High Street initially, but I think now they're going to do more of a detailed look at where exactly they would have street closures so they can still have some alley access. But it looks like that's going to happen maybe within the next couple of weeks. It was unanimously approved to do that. So I was heartened to see like quick action on something that can make a difference for the restaurants, but also I think it's a great improvement and maybe a little test of what a more pedestrian and citizen focused, downtown might look like. So
That's great. I hadn't heard that.
I know certain city offices, if you hadn't heard, some of the outward facing customer service areas at the city are planning to start slowly opening. The 22nd is what we've been told. So those folks are going to be, up and running with their mask and other safety protocols in place. So the rest of the city, we're kind of working through those detailed plans for complete reopening, just like everybody else, but it's going to be very slow going. And I know a lot of folks are going to continue to be working from home for quite some time, likely. So,
Oh, wow.
That direction.
Thinking just of things reopening, and I'm thinking particularly of the sculpture at the police station, or maybe an update on the library. I wonder what the prognosis is for Press Play Salem. I know they've moved to they've suspended their print until things get back to some sense of normalcy. But have you heard anything, Michael, about?
Earlier when this first started, I had connected just because you just feel for people. You're like, frankly, a lot of my client business for the summer events, it was canceled like April 1st, the entire spree all the way into the fall. So, for her or Press Play Salem, just begs like, well, what the coverage is pointing to when there's just a fraction of things happening, at least through the end of the summer months and early fall. It's kind of disheartening, right? Everyone losing business, and then at the same time, there's more than just the money side. It's drawing more tourism and things to Salem. There's still lots of things that things are happening, and new things are new art galleries. The Infinity Room is a new nightclub comedy thing. People are still pushing, it doesn't stop people from trying, but at the same time, Carly's, it's gonna be pretty rough to see how she can sustain that, or just press pause, I guess. Press pause, Salem.
So just thinking about, changing behavior of the public with all of this. One of the things that we know, and I've been looking into this because of my work with Mary Hill, is that people are saying that they're more comfortable doing things outside. That's pretty common sense, I guess, at this point. But I was thinking about maybe now would be a really great time to try to get our little scavenger hunt things distributed to people, the public art and the map, that we made, the little one and the larger one, and find a way to get those out into people's hands as an outdoor activity to do this summer. Do you guys have any thoughts about how we can get those to people?
There's July 1st, I got an email this morning about a July 1st alleyway, or let's see if I can, the alleyway or the first Wednesdays? It was regarding that. So I think there's still some opportunities to link to some of the downtown. I'm trying to look for it. I can't find it right now.
I need to go. I have a student meeting at 11.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, good to see you, Paula.
Yeah, good to see all of you too. I look forward to our next meeting, and I will look over the list of artists, and
Perfect. Thank you.
I'm also going to send you guys a link to our student show. I did an online exhibit for our students.
Oh,
this year.
good.
Oh, I'd love to see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, please
All
do.
right. Have a good one.
Okay,
You
bye,
too.
Paula.
Bye.
It's funny that you mentioned the, I was looking back through my emails, the scavenger hunt. Kate from the Library Foundation, she'd sent an email, I think a couple weeks back now, saying that they're already planning for their Salem Reads program for 2021. And they were looking for kind of different activities like that, like the scavenger hunt is what she was asking about, to possibly promote through that program as well. So we'd mentioned that we have that flyer already. I'd like to do some website updates to kind of, connect to that and just describe that more. So yeah, so hopefully she'll be promoting that soon, and we can work in tandem on that front.
So I'm wondering if maybe there's a way to with some of the money that we have in our budget to engage someone to take our scavenger hunt and turn it into a mobile friendly geotagged, even an app or something like that, or a map that people can just download to their phones and then walk with it.
I don't know. I'd love to see an example of something like that.
Okay.
If it seems like a city with a large public art collection might, well, actually RAC has a map.
Yeah, there are lots. I mean, if you go, yeah, there is one for RAC, and I think it's through Google Maps. Theirs is,
Yeah.
but it has it pops up with a written description, and then there's also somebody speaking about the work of art. But it seems like something we could do. We have the content already with the little scavenger hunt pamphlet. We could do, start with like the scavenger hunt one, or start with the other just general one.
Mm-hmm.
But something that's more, I know we have the artwork on the website, but if we could convert those pieces to something that's interactive and mobile optimized, I think that would be great.
I agree. That's a wonderful idea. And there was at one point, I forget her name, but a gal from the state had reached out wondering if we'd be interested in kind of connecting, to their pieces as well, like providing links to state pieces. And so I think that'd be an awesome kind of collaborative effort. We sorely need to update the website anyway. And I'm hoping to have some more time, fingers crossed, that I can help do that later this year. So I think that's a great idea, and that's something I can start asking folks about now at IT.
Well, that'd be great. So Eleanor Sandys, the same person who I was dealing with on the state capitol, is the person who was interested in that. And it seems to me that, maybe Travel Salem would sponsor something like that. I don't know, it's worth pitching to them, especially in terms of their own content, online content.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've been looking a little bit at some of the different mapping programs that are available for another project. And a lot of the examples that I was coming across relate to public art. So
Were they standalone apps, Rachel?
some of them are, and some of them are just, using
Existing.
some kind of interface that you then overlay your content onto.
I'll look at the RAC map and see if we can find other examples. If we have things like that we could take to our IT folks, then that would help kind of get that discussion going. I bet they would love to help with that. So,
does the city have an app for services or anything like that?
I think we do. I don't fully understand. I think we have several apps that folks, the GIS
Okay.
folks work with presently.
Okay.
So there's probably something that we could, we already have maps on our site, but to make it kind of interactive like that, I'll have to talk with folks. But I'm
Okay.
sure we could do something.
Yeah, and I can send you some examples that I've come across. And
That'd be great.
Okay, are we, anything else for the good of the order? Are we ready to wrap it up?
Ready?
I think we're done.
Okay. Well, this has been great. Good to see all of you. Please
I'll
send me those
send you my
artist
card.
names and stay in touch.
Okay, sounds good.
Thanks, Heather.
Thank you all.
Bye. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.